Okay guys, so this is the video set up for the Urinalysis and Blood Analysis Lab. It goes with the handout that you have. So I'm first going to do the urinalysis part, and please excuse me, I am doing all of this by myself, so I'm filming with one hand and controlling stuff with the other hand as best I can. So in this first test tube, the one with the yellow, there is a urine sample in here. I'm going to go ahead and add some Biruette reagent, which is this blue solution that I'm holding. Ooh, this is tricky to do by yourself. Okay, so I'm going to add that solution into the pipette, and hopefully I will zoom in a little bit. You can see that a color change has happened. So it went from being a pale yellow, almost lemonade type color, to this lavender color that has some white precipitate floating in it. So go ahead and record that color change in your data table. Just making sure that I've shown you everything. We're going to actually let it sit for another 2 or 3 minutes and see if anything more develops, if a deeper color happens, if more precipitate happens. So I will come back to this one in just a few minutes. Now, while we're waiting for that to happen, I will move ahead and do the glucose test. So the glucose test is going to involve this test tube with the blue solution. The blue solution is called Benedict's reagent, and it is used to test for the presence of simple sugars. So I've already added some to this test tube, and I am going to then add about 8 drops of our urine sample. Now, Benedict's does not react at room temperature. It is going to need some heat for the reaction to happen. So once I've added the drops of urine, so here you can see my pipette. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I am going to stir this up. As you can see, there is no real color change happening. You might see some little mixing lines. That's just the urine mixing with the Benedict solution, but there's no actual color change happening. So for this to happen, we're actually going to have to heat this solution. So I am going to place it in this water that's been boiling. It's not completely boiling, but it's getting pretty close. There are some bubbles happening. It's just not actively boiling right now. And we're going to leave it there for a few minutes, and we will come back and see what has happened to the urine that we've placed, if there's a color change or not. Okay, so we're going to let it sit there for 3-ish minutes or so, and that will be enough time for it to react. So there it is sitting in the water bath. Let's go back to the urinalysis test. This is the one where I had urine and I added the Biruette solution. So it's been sitting for a little bit. You can still see that there is a white precipitate. A precipitate is just what we call a solid that comes when you mix 2 liquids together. So you can see, I'm going to shake it a little bit. You can see that white precipitate swirling around in the test tube. That's actually fairly solid material. This is still a lavender purplish type color. So at this point, you can record these observations in your data table. Make sure you are recording color and you are recording whether there's a precipitate and what the color of the precipitate is. So for example, this one, I would say that the liquid is a lavender purple color, and I would say that there is a white precipitate in it. Okay, so while we wait for our glucose test to happen, again, it's going to take about 3-ish, 5-ish minutes. Actually, if you look super close, you can see a little bit of a color change happening. It's not as blue as it was, but something more dramatic than that will happen. So we're going to give it time to do that. We are going to go ahead and jump to, we're actually going to do a blood analysis test. And we're going to do a chloride test because I actually need 2 hands to do the sodium and potassium test, and I don't have someone to help me film just a second. So we'll come back to that. So for our chloride test, I've put a little sample of blood in that test tube, and I am going to add a few drops of a solution known as silver nitrate, which comes in a bottle that looks like this. It's in this brown bottle because if we expose it to light, it will break down or go bad. So we keep it in what we call an amber bottle, or a brown bottle, excuse me, while I use my thumb to steady this. Sorry guys. Again, this is what happens because I'm filming solo. So I need to open that. So I'm going to grab a pipette. Now I'm going to pick up just a little bit of that silver nitrate solution, and I'm going to add 3 to 5 drops, to my blood sample. And we're going to wait a few minutes, and then we're going to see what the reagent does to the blood. So silver nitrate is clear. There's no color to it. So here we go. Whoops. Okay, there. Hopefully you can kind of see all of it now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've added my 5 drops. And you can see that something is happening. I will get closer, I promise. So we went from being clear and very red to being this pink, almost orangish type color. I need a white background for comparison. So there we go. It's kind of against the white background. You can see it a little bit better. It's almost like a peach color, so light red. And it's also gone milky, meaning it's not, you can't see through it anymore. Trying to get the camera to adjust. So you can't actually see through the solution, which tells me that there is a precipitate. So I'm going to keep shaking it for a little bit, and I don't know if it'll show. Hopefully if you look down, you can see some white things forming. That is the precipitate. Ooh, there we go. So we're going to let that react for another 4 or 5 minutes. Let's go back and check our glucose reaction. So now that color has gone from clear see-through blue to this greenish color. And if you look closely down at the bottom, you can actually see a little bit of orange starting to peek through. This still has another 2 or so minutes to react, so let's give it its time. I just wanted to show you that, more stuff is happening. Okay, so going back to that blood chloride test, I can clearly see that there is a white precipitate. I hope you were able to a little bit, but we're going to let that continue to react. So I'm now going to attempt to prop my phone up, maybe see if I can switch the view and see if we can't do this final test, which is our sodium potassium test. So hold tight for just a little bit. I'm just going to prop you all up here while I work. So on this last test, we're actually testing for the presence of 2 ions, sodium and potassium. Those hopefully sound familiar from your chemistry class. It's been a while, but hopefully we remember those terms. Okay, so what I did was I took some blood and I put it in a test tube. And now we are going to do what's known as a flame test. So a flame test is exactly what it sounds like. I am going to take that same blood that I just showed you, and I'm going to expose it to a flame, so to fire. I'm just going to use a candle to do that. And I'm going to use an instrument called an inoculation loop, which hopefully you can now see on the camera. It's just a little piece of wire that has an opening on one end. So this is called an inoculation loop. We actually use it to put bacteria on plates. This one has not been used for that, but we can do flame tests with them as well in chemistry. So the goal here would be that I get a little bit of this blood in my inoculating loop. Think of when you were a kid and you were blowing bubbles and you try to get the bubble solution in your bubble blower. That's the same thing that I'm going to try to do here. As soon as I have it ready, I will move you so that you can see it. It's happening very quickly. Sorry guys, this one is really hard to do, where I can still have it happen and be able to show y'all. I just want to make sure that it works. It's hard to see this. Okay, so I'm going to try one more time, and then maybe I'll be able to do... I'm going to be honest, you're not going to see this well, especially on my cell phone camera. Like, you're just not. So there's a little bit of that blood solution in that loop. I'm going to hold it over the flame, and what should happen is the flame should change color. Now it did, but again, the camera didn't pick that up. So at the very end of the video, I will tell you what that color change was. Okay, so it's been enough time for our simple sugar test. So let's go back and check on our Benedict solution. So you can see that on one side, you're still seeing that kind of greenish color that I mentioned before. But if we look on the other side, you can see more of a heavy orange type color. We could let this continue to run, and honestly, the only thing that's going to happen is the entire test tube will turn orange, but we're going to go ahead and pull this out. Okay, so you see a good image here, how it's kind of two-toned. We're going to stick that back on our rack. So our color change here, remember, this is the solution that started off as a completely transparent blue color, and then it went to this kind of darkish green color, and now it's this orange color. So that's what you're recording in your table, okay? Let's go back and look at the chloride test. That is not the test tube. There we go. So this is the one that started off as just clear red. It's gone this milky, almost orangey type color. There is a white precipitate. I was able to show you just a little bit. If you look down, you can see that there's some white things floating. That is the white precipitate. That is the result of our silver nitrate combining with our blood. Here again, we have our urine sample from part 1, where we added Birouette solution to this one. Sorry, I had to think there for a second. And it went from being that pale yellow color to this lavender color with a little bit of a white milky precipitate. You can see it kind of swirling up there at the top as I shake it. Okay, I'm just checking through to make sure that you saw everything you were supposed to see. Oh, flame test. So the color flame you should have seen would also have been kind of a lavender color. So go ahead and record that the flame changed to a purple or lavender color for the, which one was that? For the blood analysis, where we were testing for the presence of sodium and potassium. Okay, that is all the info that you need to fill your table out, and you are going to use the other resources that I posted with this link to be able to completely answer your question and to kind of come up with the state of the person's body once found at the scene of the crime. Now that we've done these tests, we will literally know some of the physiological effects that that person had undergone leading up to their death. Okay, talk to y'all soon. Bye.